G'day, welcome to Realms of Power. My name's Dr. Tony Rudd and I'm the host of this show. The purpose of Realms of Power is to turn your true aligned power on, or turn your tap on, as we like to say. We broke this down into 12 different realms in our very first episode, and we've had a whole lot of guests come on the show to help with their specific area that might help you turn your power on. Now, this is designed for people that might be stuck somewhere, down on their power, low on energy, or just want to live their most unbelievable, magnificent life. So my background is a chiropractor for 25 years, helping people turn their power on through alignment and optimizing of their nervous system. I've seen such phenomenal change. I've also been a life coach in the personal development field for almost 20 years, helping people physically, chemically, emotionally, spiritually, all the different realms. And it's been an honor to be able to help so many people. That's why we've done this podcast. Now, if you'd like to find out more, I have a personal website on www.tonyrudd.com.au, and we have a Facebook page for Realms of Power to access all the episodes. They're available on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, all of the different platforms as well. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. Have an awesome day. See ya. Welcome to the Realms of Power podcast. Today, I've got my very good friend, Jim Karagiannis. It's awesome to have you on the show, buddy. Yeah, thanks for coming along.
My pleasure. My pleasure. And just as a bit of a backstory for people who won't be privy to this was like technical issues and challenges in the lead up to this. Every challenge that you could imagine we had in technical problems, we overcame. So very committed to be here, very determined to be here, and we just found a solution. Both of us being like the two old blokes from the Muppet Show, if anybody can remember. It was just getting frustrated, but just determined to find a solution with humor. So yeah, happy to be invited.
Mate, it's fantastic. And look, I know we've had so many laughs over the years doing workshops together and just having some epic funny moments. And it's just so good when you're standing in your power, you can just go with it and take a left step and just have a laugh. Sometimes there's serious moments, but look, sometimes there's so much fun to be had in those stupid moments when you reflect back on them.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So yeah, this was probably, how life imitating art. Well, this was kind of the scenario. If you wanted to talk about it, we actually had to live it and have an experience first. And as soon as we did that, we're ready to go. So
great. Well, look, in Realms of Power, we've had a number of objectives, and that's really a bottom line to turn people's power on. And as a chiropractor yourself, and I've been a chiropractor also for many years, and your wife is also an epically great chiropractor, and you guys are probably known in our profession as a power couple, if you want to call it that, is turning people's power on through chiropractic and alignment. So I'd love to touch on that, but also your coaching, because you've jumped up and you've moved across the world. You're in Scotland at the moment. You and your partner have done some amazing work in different chiropractic schools around the world. You've got such background, and also I'd love to get into the jiu-jitsu side of things as well, if you've got a moment for that. So let's just start with what you've noticed, Jim, about turning people's power on. What would you say as a chiropractor and a coach is a common theme you found to help get people to stand into their power?
There's so many synergies. A lot of the times, I guess the fundamental premise of chiropractic has always been about connection between brain and optimization of the nervous system. And we look for interferences. And so that to me always philosophically made sense. And I was drawn to that. Coaching then became an evolution or an iteration of that, a natural progression, if you will. And I was still looking for interferences, but sometimes it was then interferences not between brain and nervous system, but between ears. And so a lot of the time for me is like, what are the resistances, the blocks, the beliefs, the conditioning that we have that cause that level of interference? And to me, once I cleared interferences in the spine, then to me, the next progression in helping us step into our power is clearing any interferences that we have between our ears about beliefs about ourselves, disempowering thoughts, wounds, or old stories that keep us stuck in that kind of powerlessness. So that to me was the natural affinity for that.
Yeah. And in stepping into your power, if I can use your own life as an example, you've come from being a very successful chiropractor, having a great home life with family, kids, supporting people in workshops, to sort of change, to have the power to get up and move. Tell us about that. Tell the audience about how you made that decision as a couple and having the power to do that.
Yeah, it's a great question because for us, it's approaching now. It's just on 3 years since we left Australia, and we left Australia to move initially to Barcelona, and after 2 years there, we relocated to Edinburgh. So in hindsight, 2 international moves within 2 and a bit years is just crazy. The script wasn't like that, but it was an inner knowing that we wanted to do something more. So you're right. We had an exceptionally comfortable life, and by conventional standards, there was a lot that we had that externally looking in, you could go, that's great. But there was an unfulfilled part. There was a part of us, particularly as it deals in chiropractic, that we were coaching people and we were finding the same recurring problem. People were almost one foot out the door in the profession. And it was really disappointing and sad because we felt like someone's got to do something about this. Someone's got to do something about this. And then we looked around and went, okay, I think this is something that we need to do. And interestingly, I've got a lot of belief systems and universal principles that I adhere to. And it was one of those things where the universe then gives you an opportunity and a test to work out whether what you were saying was actually what you wanted or whether you were just BSing yourself. And pretty soon after that, an opportunity came out for Bettina to help run the chiropractic program in Barcelona. And so we had to really reevaluate all our life values. We had to really look at why would we do this and why wouldn't we do this? And we were at a point in our lives where our kids had grown up. So it was really us. And we were really at a point where we were thinking, okay, I'm reluctant to say legacy, but it was like, what's the next iteration? What's the next level? I didn't want to live a life and have had regrets. And it was, I didn't want to live with music left in me. So it was like, okay, if we could do this and this could really advance chiropractic and we love it as much as we say we do, let's go for it.
Mm.
And that was really what it came down to it. And so up until that point, I'd been the driver of a lot of things, and Bettina had been the one that said, "Let's go, I'll back you." But he was a inverse scenario. He was a situation where she had the opportunity, and I just went, "Okay, let's go. I'll back you." And she was very wise in that moment because she made me stop and reflect and find out why I was doing it for me, not just for her. And that was so brilliant because I got to calibrate in my mind why it was important to me rather than just, I'm doing it for you. Because what happens is if you do things for other people, you give away your power. But if you're really clear on why you do it for you and how it serves you, and it took me about 24 hours to really get clear on why this was a good thing for me, even though it was going to be walking away from a lot of the things that had given me a lot of success and validation, but why this was an even important calling. And that's really the pathway that I had to go to, was get clarity before I could then step in and take action from a point of power.
Mm. So look, people get opportunities in their life, and opportunities, as you know, come and go. And as a couple, you've supported each other and had each other's backs and said, let's go for it. And I was so excited when you used the word calibrate, Jim. I was just waiting for it because I know it's one of your favorite words.
It's been forced on me, actually, Tony.
Yeah, I couldn't help it. Yeah, just taking that courage, though. It's still that courage for the reality of that step. And because you've been a coach for so many people, like you said, in our profession anyway, one foot out of the door, you've been trying to inspire and lift people up. And then you've pointed the finger and the spotlight back at yourself and said, hang on, what are we willing to do? What are we willing to do for ourselves, for our profession? And having that courage is so important. Can you speak more into the courage of the decision?
Yeah, it's interesting, because it probably helps. My backstory and Bettina's backstory is we are products of migrant, came to Australia and went to Australia for the opportunity of a new life. And all they wanted was an opportunity for their kids to have opportunities they never had. And I guess that has been modeled in me because I didn't move into the other side of the world didn't seem as big deal as it would have been for my parents. So it really had a great, powerful perspective for me that, gosh, my parents went from Greece to Australia with no language, no education, no money, no resources. And whatever we needed to do was always going to be easier than what they did. So that to me, I was able to transition and take that step and step into whatever it took, knowing that whatever I did paled into insignificance in terms of what, my family had done directly. So that helped a lot. But having said that, when we were in Australia, we moved around a bit there as well. So I guess you either stay in a situation and try and solve that there, or have to make some bold decision to change a scenario. And if there were, and we had moved from one side of Australia to the other for opportunities of progression and advancement. So I guess we've kind of primed it in advance. We'd gotten used to the idea that if you want to change something, you can be the agent of change as long as you take ownership and take power and do that. So we were used to that, but this was obviously the biggest one that we had done. But it didn't sound as, from the outside looking in, it looks like a huge step, but to us, it really didn't feel as big, that step, because it's no different to being true to yourself. There's no different to stepping in and having the courage to tell someone how you feel about them. It's no different to having the courage to open up a new business or set up a new business or make a proclamation, this is who I am, this is how I live my life. So for us, that involves moving to the other side of the world. So I don't want to minimize it. Because when I reflect back, I go, yeah, it was a big step, but in the moment, it didn't feel as big as it may sound.
Yeah, I love that. And again, you've spoken into that courage. And I think as a coach, because I know you coach people as well, the other word you came there was being authentic. And one of the common themes I've had in Realms of Power is being true to yourself, having your authenticity, not what someone else tells you should do, not how busy you should be, not where you should live, not who you should date, whatever. It's having that authenticity. And that does require some reflection. And then once you've got clearer on what that authenticity is, taking that action step, that courage, that fire within you to make those moves, make those steps, whatever they are. We're using your move as the example here. But I really want you to find something that you've helped others with, because that's, someone might go, oh, well, that's well and good for Jim, but how could I, as the listener, step into my courage? What have you been able to coach people on to help them step into more of their courage?
It's funny, by doing what we did, it gave us street cred, because people would say, you're not just talking about this, you're living it. So that really helped. And I think when people can see you're congruent and in alignment with what you say, you don't just say what you do, you walk your walk, basically. So that helped us a lot. But there's 6 types of courage, actually. And I've spoken about this previously. People have this perception that courage is bravery. But it's actually that, like, when you think about first responders, when you think about soldiers, when you think about police officers, there's a level of courage, which is physical courage. And that's bravery, right? And that's what we associate with. But there's other courages. So you've also got emotional courage, which is vulnerability, right? And that's one form of courage. You've also got social courage, where you have to have the willingness to speak up and share what it is that's inside you. If you've got a dream, if you're a writer, if you basically, chiropractic want to share the chiropractic message, there's a level of social courage that has to happen to follow through, right? Another one is moral courage, where you can look at things and go, things aren't right. This isn't right. I need to do something about it, or someone should do about that. So that's another form of courage. You've also got mental courage, which is the willingness to ask yourself questions that challenge you, that you're not just stuck in dogma or this is how I'll always do it. You've got to be prepared, be willing to challenge your own thoughts and assumptions. And then finally, you've got spiritual courage, which is a life path and progression where you're constantly asking the big answers or questions in life. So all of those forms of courage involve willingly stepping in and having that 7 seconds of courage and the uncomfortableness about it to step into it, to be exposed, to be seen, to be threatened. So I think, and in coaching people, I just go, let's break it down. What's the resistance point and what type of courage do you need right now? And if they identify, I need to put myself out there, great, we go, okay, it's social courage. How do you step into that? How do you step into your power? And often, with all the work that we've done too, it was always about you never lead into it in a disempowered state. You've got to get into a peak state to be clear while you're doing it, and then step into whatever that social courage is. When people are facing bankruptcy, when people are facing heartbreak, there's a level of courage and willingness to be prepared to look at that and to work through that. And that, to me, and particularly when we cross paths, it was more terrifying for me to be emotionally vulnerable than physically challenge myself. And so I'd rather run into a pack of All Blacks than actually let you know what was really going on, because that was more terrifying. And so I had to channel that personally and lean into that area. And that's how I make it about someone who I'm working with, because it doesn't have to be courage to someone who's on a football field or a battlefield is still courage. All right. And that, to me, is just refining it into the subcategory that you need to focus on. So that's how I personalize it to people and make it relevant to them.
I think that's brilliant. Like, we've talked in realms of power, we've broken it down into 12 realms, but the 6 areas of courage, you said, literally cross over pretty much every one of those. Maybe not so much under the political courage, because that's stepping outside a lot of people's comfort zone. But again, in that, people are stepping more into their power of, I just spoke last week with the naturopath about the COVID vaccine and having the courage to stand up against some of those mandates. That was a huge amount of courage, and different than, being on the jiu-jitsu, wrestle, getting tapped out. It's very different, the physical, the social, the different types of realms there. So that's a brilliant analogy. Mate, can you speak into the jiu-jitsu for a minute? Because we've talked about courage, but working with people's physical body and in stepping into your power, a lot of people are disempowered physically these days. I know you've worked a lot with that, and you've translated some of your learnings from that in towards your coaching. Can you say into the jiu-jitsu side?
Yeah. So context, martial arts and combat have always been a high priority for me. Like, growing up, it's in a lot of ways it saved my life, because I was the angry young man at 15, 16, 17, and I had some really wise older heads that directed me to channel that towards something that was productive. A lot of people that I went to school with, that hang around with, didn't do that, and they went off the rails, and there's tales of destruction that ensued. So I'm very, very grateful that I was steered towards martial arts. So it's always helped me make sense of things and channel that. And so I had a background and conventional pathway in martial arts and trained that for a long time. And then I got injured very badly. I had consultations, even though I was a health professional, they went, listen, you have a choice here. You could keep doing this, or really significantly, basically you can't keep doing what you're doing. And I had to walk away from martial arts all up. And that correlated with one of the most flat and depressive states of my life, because I didn't have that physical expression and outlet. To me, it's not about dominating someone. It's about authentically communicating healthy masculinity for me in an environment, and also feeling safe as well. So I had to walk away from martial arts for a long time. And then one of my patients at the time ended up running the only 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu school in the Southern Hemisphere. And he was literally, 5 kilometers away from my practice, fortuitously. And he got referred into our office. It's public knowledge. I'm not talking out of school. And helped reignite him. My sensei, Frank Barker, has got something like 18 black belts. He's just a phenomenal guy. And he came in for me to support him, and we did, and and a trajectory of life changed. But that changed the pathway of my life as well, because I looked, and he goes, why don't you ever come down and have a look? I had a look at the jiu-jitsu, and I didn't know much about it at that time, and I went, this looks really interesting. I think I might get my boys into it. And so we took our boys down, because I always wanted them to train and have that, and they trained for about 12 months, and then they left it. But I went, this is actually really good. I'm interested. So for nearly a year, I was taking him there. And then at the end, I go, nah, stuff this. I think I can do this. And I started the path in the process where I was told that I was never going to potentially walk again, to getting back on a mat and doing something. I refound something in myself. and started that process and journey. And for me, jiu-jitsu was always about revealing me to me. So the life lessons that I learn on the mat, you talk to people who do jiu-jitsu, and it's a humbling process because you get your ass kicked many, many times, and there's a humility that happens to it. And my sensei always used to say that, in order to get to a black belt, there's 10,000 submissions. And you think to yourself, I've got to submit someone 10,000 times. Like, no, dude, you got to submit it 10,000 times. And when you look at that, you go, holy smoke, what happens to you to be the kind of person that will allow that to happen? So that is what got me hooked in jiu-jitsu, and I've been basically training now for 13 years, and I will keep doing this for as long as I physically can because I'm a better human and I've been a more grounded person. But what I find is, there are people who experience anxiety. They get on the mat and they find a way of regulating their emotions, finding their power back. There's people who have fear who step into the fear, realizing that these are the things that are in my control that I can use to impress that. So to me, it's less about the physicality, more about the emotional and spiritual journey that I get. So to me, it's meditative. I'm more present than anything else. I learned that if my mind wanders for a moment, it turns bad really quickly. I have to acknowledge that, at approaching 57, a lot of the things that I could do previously, I can't. So I've had to modify and modulate and calibrate accordingly, and being okay with the younger guys surpassing that. That's okay. I'm okay with that. I'm doing it for myself, and I use everything that I learn. And we put people under compression, metaphorically speaking, to help them get a better understanding of themselves. So to me, jiu-jitsu is a highly evolved form of hyper-focused coaching, really. And that's what I love about it. I get so much clarity in myself, and I just see amazing transitions and changes in people who follow it as well. So that's why I'm hooked to it. That's what I really love.
Yeah, I love it. And I love the analogy of 10,000 submissions to become a black belt.
Yeah.
You have to look at those, and they're not failures. They're like, wow, the learnings, oh my God, how do I get out of this position? Oh, I can't. I've got to tap. And breaking through the ego there, because I think this ego is such a big part of people stepping into power. They might have too much physical ego, too much spiritual ego. I've talked a lot
Yeah.
about.
Yeah.
And it is a humbling process to submit in that physical form, to be able to then grow to, wow, how can I truly find my power in my, as you just said, mental, emotional side as much as physical?
Yeah. So yeah, that to me is, so I moved away from more of the striking based martial arts that I traditionally had trained in, and evolved to that as I had evolved. And yeah, yeah, there have been so many people that I've been able to draw to jiu-jitsu, almost as many as I have to chiropractic, to be honest. And I guess when you talk about it in front of anybody, like for me, it's jiu-jitsu, personal growth, chiropractic, health and expression, and optimization of the human potential. They're all interlinked.
Mm,
But for me, I'm always inspired by someone who can talk about their area of specialty with enthusiasm and passion. I'm drawn to that.
yeah,
And so like that, I go, you do, really great. That's great. I don't have that same interest, but I'm inspired by what it lights up in you. And that to me is always what I seek to find it for myself, but also help other people explore in themselves, is what lights them up.
yeah,
And but fundamentally, they're interlinked with what you're saying is personal empowerment and getting clear on what it is, who I am, what do I stand for, what's important to me, and then leaning into that and stepping into that and taking one step towards that, to me, is the journey and pathway.
yeah, cool. Look, we talked before about the profession. You sort of touched on, there was a part of you that felt there's the power in our profession isn't quite there. And you and I have been in the profession for a long time. What would you say to the profession as a whole? Because, you helped that jujitsu sensei who ended up teaching you a lot, but he came to you from misalignment, from being tapped out or whatever, and you were able to massively help him. And there's still so many people in the public that don't really know the power of alignment, the power of optimum nerve expression. And they have this different association with chiropractic than what you and I would talk about. How would you tell the chiropractors out there, or get that message across of the real true power of chiropractic?
That's a really important question, Tony, because there's two schools of thought. There's the commoditization of chiropractic,
Yep.
and then there's the ultimate expression of it. And I'm definitely in the second camp. For to me, if I had as powerful as a chiropractic adjustment is, if I had an opportunity to tell a story or adjust someone, I'd always pick the story.
Yeah.
Because to me, like, the adjustment is great, but it doesn't give context, for people. Like, sometimes people can have miraculous responses from just one adjustment, but and they think that that's what chiropractic is, or it's the thing, and it's not. To me, it's chiropractic is so much more than the amelioration of symptoms. It's always been about connection to higher self. It's always about evolution and iteration and integration of universal principles. So I'm very philosophically based in that regard. So to me, it's about finding where someone's at and asking questions of them and say, look, here's where you're at. You're coming in with this symptom. I would imagine that this would be quite restrictive. What things is it stopping you from doing in life? And you go, this and this, great, awesome. You go, now, if there was a way somehow that we could not only address this in the short term, but potentially optimize your health and well-being for the long term, is that of interest and value to you? And once people go, well, sure, you go, great. What kind of things would you do if you had all these elements taken care of? And they go, I'll do this, this, and this. I go, great. That's the gap we're talking about. So to me, my responsibility is about the chiropractic part of it is identifying, because there's this perception in chiropractic that, people don't like the selling, but the reality is I think you need to own there's a selling, but you're not selling the commodity. You're not selling a service. What you're selling to someone is a higher and optimum potential and version of themselves. And if you can link your products and services to the expression of that person at their highest level, you're not selling anything. You're actually linking up what they want to what you provide. But you have to be able to, and courageous enough to tell the story over and above what they think is the case. So identify their specific needs, but let them know there's more to that. And that's available to them if they so choose. So to me, chiropractic was very little about selling, but it was more about opening doors and windows in people's minds and souls that allowed them to even dream of a possibility of better health for a start. And then just being the person that helped them link that up and go through the process. So that's what to me is chiropractic. It's about potential, whatever potential may look like.
And do you think with the way the world is right now, and that, there's been some dramas over the last few years, the way people are moving maybe away from medicine to a degree, that a lot of people are taking lots of pills, and if they were functioning at a higher level and were open to that story, do you believe that there is an opening and an opportunity, if you want to call it that, from what you said before, if chiropractors had the courage to tell that story, that there could be more of a shift in the public perception?
I'd love that to, yeah. So the idealistic part of me says yes. I realize, and that's always what I've done. What I also realize, it's got to be the story supported by traction, political arms. It's got to be money for research. So it's all of those things. But at a grassroots level, as a frontline chiropractor, yeah, it's letting people know about what chiropractic's about and what's really about in terms of the way that I see it, and then support it with all other avenues. I think I agree. There's a disenchantment and there's probably a skepticism in the general public about what's really going on here, and how can I take back control and power for myself. So I think that's definitely the case in it, and I think it's a great opportunity for us to explain that and position what it is that we do. But that's not enough anymore. We need to do that and keep doing that, been supported by all arms and avenues and factors. That's why for us, when we really sat with it and we went, how can we make the biggest impact possibly can? So that's why for Bettina, it was like, I want to get right to the start. I want to go and start at educational level and try to help these students be bulletproof in terms of their belief in themselves, not arrogant, but belief in the principles and what it is that they're out there to do to start that process. But we have to keep doing that. And there's a realization sometimes that the cavalry is not coming and you've got to do it yourself and step into that. And it's a case of, what can I do? Because it's all well and good to go, someone should do something about this. Someone should do something about this. And if we all do that, nothing happens. So, but at a baseline level, I definitely believe people won't know about what chiropractic is potentially available to them unless we tell them, unless we get out there and do that. Work within our guidelines, work within what's ethical, of course, and also let them know what potential is available to them if they so choose. And that to me has always been congruent. It's really interesting because when we moved here, and when Bettina moved to the UK, I had this opportunity to go, how do I maintain my registration? I didn't want to let go of my license. I worked too hard for it and it meant a lot to me. So I either had to keep flying back to Australia to do some locum work to maintain my registration or sit the GCC exam in the UK. And for anybody who knows, the General Chiropractic Council, the UK is a very evidence-based, mechanistic kind of a model. And to pass that exam was kind of like a prostate exam against my will. It was really, really difficult, right? I'll put it in the nicest possible way I can. And they asked me, I had to present cases for chiropractic, like to justify my reasoning. And I presented 3 cases and they wanted to drill it down to a paradigm of health that wasn't mine, and I understand they have regulatory requirements. And so they asked me, they go, right, so based on how you took care of these people in Australia, can you see the error of that as you come into the UK? I was really confronted by that. If I said yes just to pass the exam, I would have given up my own integrity. I wasn't prepared to do that. So I said, look, I'm really clear on what the expectations are in practicing in the UK. And they go, yeah, but I go, no, I'm clear on what my expectations are here. I practiced within the laws of the land in Australia and I was congruent and I took care of people for a long time. I'm not going to make that wrong and shut my back on what people believed I guided them to just to pass an exam. I'm not prepared to do that. So, and they went, fine, okay, I got through. So that's on a personal level, that's the biggest victory and a power moment where I was confronted with something to go, are you going to compromise your principles? Or are you going to stand firm and work with what has to work in order to progress? And I just found a solution in a way. I couldn't have done that when you talk about power. If I was a inexperienced, disempowered person, I potentially could have folded. But I think what I've learned in my own journey and pathway of stepping into those difficult scenarios is I didn't have to compromise. I was honest, I was truthful, and I communicated what needed to be communicated, and at least I could live with myself. I was prepared to walk away from that and keep flying back to Australia if it meant I had to keep my registration active, but thankfully I didn't have to. So
Look, that's one of the best examples, Jim, of standing in your power. You've moved overseas, you've stood firm with your principles, and that is literally the perfect example of standing in your power with your profession on the line, but you're staying with your principles and you found a way. You found a way through. I love that. Look, mate, what we better do, we better start wrapping up this podcast because otherwise we'll just keep chatting and chatting. But I'm sure there's been so much for the listeners in what you've said and they can digest that at their will. And I know that you also do some phenomenal coaching work, and what you and Bettina have done overseas is just amazing for this profession, whether it's speaking at events, one-on-one coaching, supporting practices around the world or back here in Australia. Mate, I just take my hat off to you. It's just amazing. And it's been an honor to know you through the workshops we've done, whether that's been in personal growth back in the day when we spent all that time together. So what I'd like to do is just, we've covered some themes today, but if you had some absolute gold, if you had some golden wisdom that you'd like to share with the listeners of this podcast on how to turn your power on, what would that be?
for me is be true and honest with yourself. There's a phenomenon called the Stockdale paradox, which was related to a POW who was in captivity for 7 years. And they asked him, how did you survive when everybody else didn't survive? And he said, who didn't survive this? He goes, the optimists. And you kind of question that. You go, huh? How is that possible? He goes, yeah, that was easy. They didn't survive because in the optimist mind, they go, hey, everything will be okay. We'll be out by Christmas. And Christmas would come and go and they're still there. And their spirit was gone and they were dispirited. He goes, the people who survive are the people who could maintain hope, because you hope you can't ignore, but also have a brutal honesty of the situation. And so to me, I've interpreted that to go, if you are honest with yourself, you truly are honest with yourself. and get clear on who you are, what you stand for, what's important for you, the next step, all you then need is courage, right? Because you're clear on what it is that you need to do. And so to me, the journey is getting clarity on that first, and then determine what element of courage we talked about earlier, 6 areas of courage that you just have to step into. And that to me is the pathway of change and transformation, is always getting connection to self first and foremost, and then from there, taking the steps that are necessary.
Man, I absolutely love it. So for the listeners, can you share how they would find you if they want to coach you? Tell us the name of your coaching platform.
Yeah, we are Lux Consulting Co. You can check us out on luxconsultingco.com. And yeah, we run retreats, we do speaking engagement, we do team trainings and the like. And it's not just in chiropractic. It's what's fascinating is the biggest growth we've had has been in some degrees outside of chiropractic, where we use chiropractic principles. It's really fascinating. You use chiropractic principles and people outside of chiropractic go, wow, how long has this been around for? You go, oh, since 1895. And so the same inside out philosophy that governed my practice and practice career is the same principles that we use. So whether you're a chiropractor or not, it's all about getting connected to self first and then acting from that place. So luxconsultingco.com is the way to get in touch. So we're on socials as well, so we can reach out that way.
Oh, absolutely love it, Jim. Well, mate, thank you so much for your time. For the listeners, thanks heaps for tuning in. Have an awesome day. See ya.
Wow. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Realms of Power. I have such gratitude for your time and energy and the vision to join us with turning your true aligned power on. To take your power up another level, you could share this episode with someone who you think would benefit, or make a comment online that would help us get this information out there. We'd really appreciate your love and support. Hope you have an awesome day. See ya.